Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual public information meeting for state project number 301-565, which was formerly project 301-177. The project number was updated recently for internal DOT tracking changes, but for the purposes of this meeting, the email address and webpage will still reference the original number 301-177. This project is the mechanical and electrical rehabilitation of bridge number 08032R, more commonly known as the Saga Rail Bridge, carrying 4 tracks of Metro North Railroad over the Saugatuck River in Westport, Connecticut. My name is Rochelle Clark from CHA Consulting, and I am the MC for this virtual public information meeting. We hope that everyone finds the presentation informative and that we'll be able to address any questions or concerns you may have. Before we get started with the main presentation, I want to walk through the format for tonight's meeting. We will have a brief introduction to the Zoom features available for your use. Then we will have the technical portion of the presentation, which will include the condition of the existing structure, the purpose and need for the project, and the recommended design. Following the technical presentation, we will open up the forum to comments and questions. Next slide, please. As part of the Title VI civil rights, no person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. A link is provided on this slide for additional civil rights information. We would greatly appreciate if you would complete the public survey after tonight's meeting. A link and a QR code are provided on this slide. Links to both the public survey and the civil rights flyer are also available on the project website, which is available at https://portal.ct.gov/DOT Westport 301-177. A recording of this presentation will be posted to YouTube after the event. Closed captioning, including non-English translation options, are available on YouTube. This is the Title VI notice to the public, which states that the Connecticut Department of Transportation operates its programs and services without regard to race, color, and national origin in accordance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Any person who believes he or she has been aggrieved by any unlawful discriminatory practice under Title VI may file a complaint with CTDOT. This slide has the Title VI notice to the public in Spanish. I will pause on the screen before moving on to the next slide. Goals for tonight's meeting include giving you the opportunity to interact with the project team as well as introduce the project team members. The formal presentation will discuss the existing condition of the bridge, go over the proposed rehabilitation measures, and touch on some of the other details of the project. After that, we will have a question and answer period. To use the Zoom Q&A function, select the Q&A tool at the bottom of the webinar window. You may have to hover over the bottom portion of your screen in order for that to appear. The Q&A window will open as seen on the right after you click the Q&A button. Then you can type the question in the text box and click enter, and it will submit the question. Questions can be submitted in multiple ways. Could we go back a slide, please? Thank you. Questions can be submitted in multiple ways. For the quickest response, please submit questions through the Zoom Q&A as noted on the previous slide. This function will only be available during tonight's meeting. If you would like to submit your questions through email, please use the email provided, dotproject0301-0177@ct.gov. And lastly, if you prefer to submit your question by phone, you can call 860-594-2020 and leave a voicemail. Please state your name and reference the project number as the reason for your call in the voicemail. The project email, voicemail, and Q&A box will be screened by the project team, and the project team will then read the questions out loud. Questions may be asked at any time during the presentation, but they will be answered at the end. There is also a project webpage where a recording of tonight's meeting will be made available. The webpage will also include information that was explained on how to leave questions and comments for the project team. That website is https://portal.ct.gov/DOT Westport 301-177. The question and comment period will be open through April 30th. Questions or comments after tonight's meeting may be submitted via email or voicemail. To start off our meeting, we have a brief welcome from Keith Wilberg with the Town of Westport. Keith?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome for our virtual public information meeting. Thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Keith Wilberg. As was said, I am the town engineer with the Westport Department of Public Works, and I am thrilled to be here and glad to be of assistance in any way I can locally with the Connecticut DOT design team that we have assembled here. They're going to introduce themselves shortly for the Saugatuck River Railroad Bridge. If you're local and you happen to know who I am in Public Works, have any questions, by all means, look me up on the town website or just stop by our office. I can guarantee you I probably won't have an answer to your technical questions, but I can also guarantee you I can point you in the right direction to somebody who does. So with that, I'm looking forward to seeing the presentation here myself. And again, thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Keith. And now I will hand it over to Dan Minturn for introductions, followed by the technical presentation.
Thanks, Rochelle. The project team consists of the Connecticut Department of Transportation, who are owners of this bridge, which is actually operated by the Metro-North Railroad. The team consists of Bart Sweeney, Al Garcia, and Haresh Talakia. Also included on the team is a consultant liaison, which you've just met, which is Rochelle Clark, who's with CHA. The design team consists of H.W. Lochner with Richard Bray and myself as the prime consultant. And we have a sub-consultant for the mechanical and electrical design, which is from STV and includes Nick Altabrando, Jorge Leon, and Andrew Monkhouse. The project is located just to the east of the Westport train station over the Saugatuck River. And you can see just to the north is the I-95 bridge over the same river. This aerial view gives you a little bit better perspective of the movable span over the navigational channel, which is where the work will be performed. The Westport train station can be seen kind of in the background to the west of this, and you can see there's 4 tracks of Metro-North Railroad that go across this bridge and to the station. The purpose of this project is to address the existing mechanical and electrical systems which do not provide reliable operation of the lift bridge spans. And this is a bridge that's been there for 120 years, so it's already scheduled to be replaced. The intent is to extend the life of the bridge by doing the mechanical electrical upgrades to provide a safe and a reliable operation of the lift spans until the bridge can be replaced. There's also, in addition to the mechanical and electrical work, a little bit of structural rehab work. In this particular slide of the elevation of the bridge, pier number 2, which is where the toe of this operating span comes to rest, has masonry that needs to be dealt with to address cracked stones of the seat. And then there's some repointing of the west face of the stone masonry stem. The navigational channel, which is where the span is, could you go back to one slide? I'm just going to point out the operator house, which controls the span operation. And you can see where we're pointing with the lift span. The dashed line is when the span is in the open position. And these 2 photos give you a visual look at that pier 2 that we just talked about on the west face of the pier, where the repointing will be done. And now I'll turn it over to Nick Altebrando from STV, who will give you an overview of the planned mechanical and electrical rehab work.
Thanks, Dan, and good evening, everyone. So as Dan said, we have a 120-year-old bridge here that is scheduled to be replaced. And as part of the mandate that ConnDOT gave us working with Metro North, we've made an assessment of the mechanical and electrical systems to see how we can improve the reliability and maintainability so that the bridge can safely operate throughout the rest of its remaining life. So let's just start with some of the mechanical rehabilitation. The majority of the equipment on the movable span that actually opens and closes it to marine traffic is original. So we have 120-year-old material for the majority of the equipment. And also we have a very unusual feature at Saugatuck in that the bridge is driven from a diesel engine inside the control house. So based on our discussions and our inspections of the system, we made the determination that we were going to replace the diesel engine with a small electric motor, which now is what's being used on all the other movable bridges that ConnDOT owns, so that operation and maintenance can be more regular. And we're going to make a decision on what components we're going to replace, as well as what components we're going to refurbish and retain. So if we go to the next slide, you can see on the left-hand side the old diesel engine that we're going to leave in place but disconnect. The center is a very unusual set of existing gearing and linkages that are going to be disconnected and removed that connect the diesel engine to the movable span. They are so worn that replacement or rehabilitation in kind just wasn't feasible. So we're going to take that out, and we're going to put the small electric motor on the span on the photograph on the right and connect a new motor, electric motor, with these old gears that are there, which we have determined to be salvageable for the next 15 years of service until the new bridge is in place. If you go to the next slide, there are two other critical systems on the movable bridge that we're also going to refurbish, and they're the ones that keep the bridge stable as the trains go over it. At the left-hand side is what we call a tow latch. That's at the far front end of the span. It keeps the span down as the train goes on it, on the bridge itself. And in the back, we have a heel lock, which actually pushes up on the spans and again keeps the span stable as the trains go across it. Our determination was that we could keep those systems more or less with some minor refurbishing. Now, these two drawings aren't really intended to be read, but they are intended to give you an idea of what we are going to develop for the contracting community as we move forward to put these plans out on the street for open bid. So what you see on the left-hand side is the refurbishing drawing that outlines all the work that's going to be done at the tow latches. And if you look at the right-hand side of the sheet, that's going to be the drawing that more or less makes up for the new span drive equipment that's going to be located on the movable span proper. Now, for the electrical rehabilitation on the bridge, the systems that are on the bridge now are not new. Over time, the original systems have been replaced, but even the material that's out there now is 20, 30, and in some cases 40 years old. And as we know from our computers at home or any stereo we have, you just can't find parts to replace equipment, electrical equipment that's that old. And that's actually what's happened with the bridge. Even with the best of maintenance, we can't find parts anymore. The equipment is just obsolete. And we made the determination that to make this bridge more reliable, we're going to replace the electrical system in total with a simple system that ties all the equipment, the span drive, the auxiliary drives, into one common point and just make it easier and safer to maintain. If we go to the next sheet, you'll see some photographs of the equipment that's out there now, the motor control center. You can see the control panels that are there and the actual controls on the diesel motor that exist on the bridge now. And they'll all be replaced as part of this contract. And like I did with the mechanical drawing, if we go to the next slide, you're going to see two drawings that represent how we depict electrical work for the contracting community. On the left-hand side is what we call a one-line wiring diagram. It may look complicated, but in fact, it is a simple drawing that electrical contractors use to determine what goes off the bridge and what goes on the bridge. If we look at the right-hand side, this is going to be the new control center. It's going to be tying all the control equipment into one location, so it's going to be safer, more efficient for the operator, and again, make the bridge more reliable and more maintainable as we move forward. With that, I'm going to turn things back over to Rick, who's going to discuss some of the permitting.
Thanks, Nick. The project site is within a FEMA 100-year floodplain, and the bridge is over a federal navigation channel. Interagency coordination is required, and the Connecticut DOT and the design team have commenced the screening and coordination process with upcoming meetings with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the U.S. Coast Guard that will determine the permits required for construction of this project. At this fairly early stage in the design process, which is about 30% complete, the anticipated permits include from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, a general flood management certification related to the sites being present within a floodplain. From the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, a certificate of permission reflecting the rehab of a permitted structure over the tidal watercourse. Also, a Department of Energy and Environmental Protection boating permit related to the potential use of a floating work platform for the Pier 2 masonry work that Dan had mentioned before, where the toe of the lift span comes to rest. We also have a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Section 408 authorization expected for, that's the federal part of accepting the modification of a bridge over a navigable channel. And the U.S. Coast Guard, we expect construction and deviation letters addressing work affecting marine traffic in the vicinity of the bridge, including those vessels requiring bridge openings for passage, as the movable span will not be able to open for marine traffic for short durations during the mechanical equipment swap out and testing. The deviation letter will address advanced notifications with mariners and the harbor master. I'd like to hit a little bit on the project schedule and the construction cost estimate. The design needs to be advanced from the current 30% level to 100% level. At about 90%, the permit applications will be sent to the agencies, and we need to have permit approvals before we can advertise the job. We expect the permit approval and design process will culminate probably in March 2025, plus or minus about a year from now. From there, we have a procurement phase where we will, the department will be advertising for a contractor to perform the specialized work for the mechanical electrical. And the contractor will have to procure and fabricate some parts. So we do expect that the fall of 2025 is the commencement of construction that you would see in the field. Continuing on for one season, we're hoping that and expect that it would be spring into summer of 2026 that the work would be completed. There's an estimated construction cost at this preliminary state of design to get 30% of $4 million expected, and the funding source is 100% state funds. The schedule presented and the cost estimates, again, are advancing of the project is all dependent upon the approval of permits and the availability of funds. With that, I am going to turn it over to Rochelle to address questions and answers again.
Thank you, Rick. That concludes the technical presentation for tonight's meeting. We will now move into the open forum portion for your comments and questions. As a reminder, you can enter your questions into the Zoom Q&A window. You can also email the following address, DOT project 0301-0177@ct.gov, or call 860-594-2020 and leave a voicemail, and the project team will get to them as soon as we can. We have our first question. The question is, will the bridge still be open during construction, from an anonymous attendee? Rick Bray, would you please take that question?
Yes, thank you, Rochelle. The bridge is expected to remain open for rail operations throughout the project, with several generally, there will be several off-peak partial closures. Again, there's the lift span operates with two there's 2 leafs, 2 tracks each. And during testing and swap out, there will be some periods where there will be closure. The operations for marine traffic, as far as being able to open the bridge, will be more adversely affected, again, during those same closures, where the bridge will be in the position where it's closed, so train traffic can operate over it, but the bridge will not be able to open for marine traffic for what we expect to be several short to medium duration periods that would be measured in days or weeks, with ample planning and notice through the Coast Guard deviation process or letter process that I had mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Rick. We have our next question. This question is from Bruce Becker. What enhancements can be made to the protected lane for biking and walking across the bridge to make it safer and more convenient? Haresh Dolakia, could you please take this question?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Haresh Dolakia, and I'm project manager for this project. As mentioned during the presentation, the goal of this project purpose and need is to address the mechanical and electrical rehabilitation of the structure. So under this project, none of those improvement will be made, but we did made it safer for the planks that were in the deteriorated shape. So that is the only limited repair that we'll be doing. There will not be any enhancement to the existing condition. Thank you.
Okay. We have another question from an anonymous attendee. Will there be any impact at the station? Rick Bray, could you please answer this question?
Yeah, this is yet to be determined, but any work that could affect rail commuters will be minimal in nature and will be performed during off-peak hours, similar to what I had described earlier. As they're operating and working on some leaves, it's possible that there will be 2 tracks out of service at a time, which could impact how the station operates. But again, it would be done at off-peak times with ample notification and general service continuing per plan.
Thank you, Rick. Our next question is from Matthew Mandel and is similar to one of the other questions we received. There is a walkway on the bridge, a very important aspect to the community to be able to access the other side in terms of commuting and the use of the commercial areas in the Saugatuck neighborhood. Haresh Dolakia, could you please respond to this question?
So as I mentioned, we are aware of that the people are using this bridge, and as I mentioned, we are keeping it safe as it is in condition, and we'll make sure that it continues to be safe until we do the replacement of the structure. So rest assured that it will continue to be safe.
Our next question is again by another anonymous attendee. Will the pedestrian walkway be open during construction?
Michelle, yeah, the intent of the project and the design is actually trying to minimize disruption, and it is expected that the pedestrian walkway will be able to remain open throughout the construction phase. There are very small periods of time where there will be a short time where there'll be some impact, but again, there will be ample notice and will be performed off-peak, and the contractor, when he gets into the means and methods during construction phase, there will be a complete protocol for coordination and communication with the town. But again, it will be minimal.
Okay. Rick, that is very similar to the next question. Will this path be open? If there are periods of shutdown, how will the community know and for how long? So again, you mentioned that there would be notification. Do you want to add anything to your answer?
The department on all the projects, again, involves a team with community outreach. So there will be points of contact. There will be coordination through the town as well as through other channels. So I think that addresses it.
Okay. Thank you for that. Again, to remind everyone in the audience, if you would like to submit a question, that can be done through the Q&A window, and you can also email the following address, DOT project 0301-0177 @ct.gov, or you can call 860-594-2020 and leave a voicemail for your question. It looks like we have another question from an anonymous attendee. The question is, how often does the bridge open? I'm assuming this question was, how often does it open to marine traffic? Rick Bray, would you take this one, please?
Yes, the average number of annual openings for marine traffic over the last 5 years has been 3 per year. In addition to that, Metro North does open the bridge several times a year for inspection and maintenance.
Thank you, Rick. Our next question is from Robbie Guimond. Although this is about upgrading the existing span, what's the team's thoughts on the need for a movable span upon future replacement? Follow-up questions depend on the answer. Haresh Dholakia, could you please respond to this question?
Yes, I can respond that one. So we have a study ongoing. Department has a study going on for a plan. We call it a planning study to evaluate whether we can replace the structure when we do the replacement instead of a movable span, make it as a fixed span. Their study is ongoing and it will take time to complete it. It may take up to 2 years. So at that time, we will be able to answer that question.
Thank you very much, Haresh. I also want to remind everyone that the comment period will be open through April 30th. So if you do think of a question after the meeting, you can email the project email, dotproject 301-0177 @ct.gov, or call 860-594-2020 and leave a voicemail to ask a question. If you are leaving a voicemail after tonight's meeting, please be sure to mention the project number 30-177 so that the question can be directed to our team. It looks like we have another question. This question is, if the enhancement, such as widening and better protection to the bike and walkway, were added to the scope of work, could this also be eligible for funding from the state? What process is required to add this enhancement to the scope of the project? What is the total budget for this project? I'm going to hand this one back over to Haresh again.
So as I mentioned, the current scope of the project is just to address the mechanical and electrical rehab, and any widening or any improvement to the walkway will also change the current balance of the movable span, which will require a lot of changes to the machinery and everything. So that cannot be done during this project, and any improvement that can be only done when we do the replacement of the structure. So this is beyond the scope and it cannot be done under this project.
Thank you, Haresh. We have another question from Benedict Meyer. I could probably use some clarification on this one, so if you feel like submitting a follow-up question, I'd appreciate it. The question is, are Kribari Bridge changes part of this presentation tonight? I'm not exactly sure what's meant by Kribari Bridge. I believe Haresh might be able to answer this question.
That is an highway bridge, which is just upstream of this bridge. So it's a separate project. It is not part of this presentation tonight.
Thank you, Haresh. Benedict, if you are on tonight and would like to ask questions about that particular project, again, feel free to send us an email at the project email for this project, DOT project 0301-0177 @ct.gov, and we can redirect that question to the project team for that project. So for our next project, or our next question, we have one from an anonymous attendee. And the question is, when will the full bridge replacement be? Haresh, could you respond to the question of when we are expecting the full replacement of the Saugatuck Bridge?
We are in the initial phase. We are launching a new project for replacement. So it's in a very early stage, I would say, but we will have full planning study done, and then there will be design and replacement. So I would say in 15 years, we will have new structures started.
We have another question which we might need some additional clarification on. This one is from Kristen Mott Purcell. This question is, what will the study data inputs include for the potential bridge replacement? So it sounds like this is a question related again to the future replacement of the Saugatuck Bridge, and you're asking about what the study data inputs would be. Not exactly quite sure what kind of inputs you're thinking of, and with regard to, are you concerned about community input into that project? If that's the case, there will be a public information meeting for that project, similar to this one, once that project has reached a preliminary design phase. Haresh, do you have any additional thoughts on this particular question?
I think you covered it. Mostly whenever we have a new project for the replacement, we will have full NEPA study done, right? So at that time, there will be input from public, all the inputs that we'll have, and full study will be done. So all the data that will require, as I mentioned, we will have a new project started soon.
Thank you. We have a question from Bruce Becker. This one leans toward the technical side. If the weight of the enhanced walkway is identical to the existing walkway, why would that not be possible? And please answer the question about what is the process for refining the scope and what is the budget? Nick Altabrando, would you please respond to this question?
Sure. So the walkway will be wider, and I guess the question is, how wide should it be? And once we start to widen it, we have the control house in the way, and we have other objects that we have to clear that would make widening of the existing walkway in the present form of the bridge pretty complicated. And the other thing is, this bridge is actually a, and I'm sorry, I didn't put the camera on. This bridge actually rolls backwards as well as opens, so it translates while it rotates. And because of that, this walkway actually has to be broken free of the span so that it can clear the fixed points of the bridge as it moves back. It's quite, as Haresh said, it's quite an exercise right now to make all that work, given the constraints of the project, and it would undoubtedly become heavier. Even the mechanical components that would have to control the larger sidewalk would get bigger. So I'm not prepared to talk about scope and contractual issues, but from a technical perspective, it's a lot more complicated given where it is right now and given how it's configured than it may look like.
Thank you very much, Nick. As a reminder again, you can enter your questions into the Q&A window, and the project team will get to them as soon as we can. The meeting survey will also be posted through April 30th. So you can also visit the webpage for this project, portal.ct.gov/DOT Westport 301-177, and a link to that survey is available there as well. The post-meeting survey will be open through the 30th, similar to our Q&A period of time. We do have another question. This question is from Robbie Guimond. I'd like to remind this team that several projects, private and public, are coming that will need access by barges, tugs, scows, cranes, etc. While I appreciate the update immensely, the need to access the river for dredging now and in the future is paramount. The study is great, but as a mariner owner, I'm concerned that the lack of reliability has prevented reliable opening, hurting businesses. Also reflected in the minimal openings to date. Any thoughts on the history of limited access and it reflecting in the minimal openings? I think this is a question that maybe we could read again, and I can try to maybe make some clarifications, but it sounds to me like the question that's being answered is kind of this note that the bridge doesn't open very often, and the concern about that, as well as a concern about reliability, and then just, kind of just some asking for some input and some feedback on the limited access to date. Rick Bray, could you respond to this question?
Let me provide at least a little bit of input from my perspective. And again, we understand that the reliability has been a concern as far as the opening and operation of the bridge for marine traffic, which is why this project that we are engaging on right here with the mechanical electrical has been initiated to try to get us a more reliable service for the period of time until such time when they could replace the bridge. So there's no doubt that the department and Metro North are very aware of that. As far as the impact on marine traffic, the future project, I think this question really addresses more specifically the things that will need to be covered and I'm sure will be covered as part of the future bridge replacement project. This project will have a small amount of work with, a small work platform to do some repointing and crack repair of Pier 2, as mentioned, which is right on adjacent to the Federal Navigation Channel. There really won't be other work in the waterway or over that navigation channel that impacts marine traffic during the construction of this project. Most of the other rest of your questions really are important topics, and I'm sure the department will appreciate the input from you and other marina operators and marine people who own boats and use the facility, because again, we in the department will be looking at all of that as part of the replacement process.
Thank you, Rick. We're going to step back a minute and talk about the budget for this project again. Haresh, would you mind talking about the budget for this project and also maybe address any issues related to the replacement project as well?
Sure. So the current budget for this project for mechanical and electrical rehab is about $4 million, as is what mentioned in the presentation. For the replacement project, it is too early for now. When we do the full study, and at that time we will determine. So that is the current budget, $4 million for rehabilitation, mechanical electrical for this project.
Thank you, Haresh. We currently don't have any open questions into the team, so I will wait another minute or so to see if any more questions come in. You can enter your questions into the Q&A window, send an email to the project, or call 860-594-2020 and leave a voicemail. If you are watching on YouTube, we will have the recording on the project webpage, and you can watch the entire presentation after tonight, including the question and answer session. I do see that we have another question from Robbie Guimond that was directed toward the town. So I'd like to hear from the town about future dredging and the need to mandate this potential bridge to be able to open. Could Keith Wilberg from the town of Westport, could you please address this question?
Sure. Hi, Robbie. This is Keith. I'm with the Department of Public Works. I don't have a schedule for the dredging project in front of me, but certainly would be able to answer that question. Give me a call, or you can look me up on the website at Public Works and be able to work with you. But we would work obviously hand in hand with the Department of Transportation on this, and they would be giving us notifications when things are going to be going on, when there's projected closings, that type of thing. So we would be putting out press releases as we get them. And we'd be working as closely. I would be the mouthpiece for them, for want of better words. I hope this answers your question. If it doesn't, look me up in town hall and give me a call, and I'll be able to talk to you and give you a better answer. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Keith. Again, I will wait just another minute or so to see if any more questions come in. Again, following the meeting, if you are able, please fill out our brief post-meeting survey. This can be found at the project website, portal.ct.gov/DOT Westport 301-177. Your feedback helps us improve the virtual meeting process for the future, and we appreciate your participation. We have another question from Robbie. This is a little bit of a clarification from his last question. He says, it's more of a question of, does the town want a movable span? Keith, would you mind responding to this for the town?
Yeah, this is just more of a comment on our end. I'm not even going to kind of weigh in on this yet. We're going to be waiting to hear what the DOT comes back with their study, to see what they're looking to do. This has more to do with the replacement, which is further down the road. We're going to listen to what they have to say before we weigh in. There's plenty of time on that. So
thank you, Keith. All right, it looks like that's it for questions tonight. Thank you everyone for attending and for your participation in tonight's virtual public information meeting. We appreciate everyone's time, input, and questions. As I said previously, we will be monitoring the phone and email address during the comment period, which is through April 30th. A link to the project webpage has been posted to the chat. We're looking forward to a successful project here in Westport. And thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Good night, everyone.